Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to share something a little different, something that's been on my mind for a while now. I'm 84. I just realized my successful children are deeply unhappy. I raised 3 successful children who can't remember the last time they felt genuinely happy. My name is Vincent Carlisle. I'm 84 years old, and I just realized that everything I thought I did right as a father actually broke something fundamental in the people I love most. My children are all doing exceptionally well by conventional standards. My oldest son, Andrew, is 56, a managing director at an investment bank in New York. My daughter, Claire, is 53, a partner at a major law firm in Chicago. My youngest son, Michael, is 50, a cardiac surgeon in Boston. Between the 3 of them, they've earned more money, accumulated more credentials, and achieved more professional recognition than I ever dreamed possible when they were young. I was proud of that. I've been proud of it for decades. When people asked about my children, I'd list their accomplishments with this sense of satisfaction, this feeling that I'd done my job as a father. I'd raised kids who became something, who made their mark, who succeeded in a competitive world. That felt like the ultimate validation of my parenting. But last month, all 3 of them came to visit me for my birthday. It was the first time in years they'd all been in the same place at the same time, and watching them together over that weekend, I saw something I'd been missing for a long time. They weren't happy, not in any real sustainable way. They were stressed, exhausted, disconnected from themselves and each other, going through the motions of successful lives while seeming fundamentally empty inside. I grew up during the Depression in a working-class family in Philadelphia. My father was a factory worker who got laid off 3 times before I was 10 years old. I watched him struggle to keep food on the table, watched my mother stretch every penny, watched my parents' faces when they had to tell us there was no money for things other kids had. That experience marked me deeply. I became obsessed with security, with never being in that position, with making sure my future family would never know what it felt like to worry about money. I put myself through college working multiple jobs. I studied engineering because it was practical, because it led to stable employment. I got a job at a manufacturing company right out of school and worked my way up over 30 years to become a senior vice president. I made good money, not wealthy by any means, but comfortable, solidly upper middle class. My wife, Patricia, and I bought a nice house in the suburbs, sent our kids to good schools, took family vacations. We had the life my parents could never have given me. And I was determined that my children would do even better. I wanted them to have every advantage, every opportunity. I wanted them to be competitive in a world that I saw as increasingly cutthroat and demanding. So from the time they were young, I pushed them. I pushed them hard. I expected excellent grades. Not good grades, excellent grades. A B was disappointing. A C was unacceptable. I'd sit with them at the kitchen table, going over their homework, their tests, pointing out every mistake, every area where they could have done better. I thought I was teaching them the value of excellence, the importance of always striving to improve. I enrolled them in activities that would look good on college applications. Piano lessons, debate team, math club, community service. I'd review their schedules with them, making sure they were maximizing their time, not wasting it on things that wouldn't contribute to their future success. When Andrew wanted to quit piano to play in a rock band with his friends, I said no. That was frivolous. That wouldn't help him get into a good college. I talked to them constantly about the importance of going to prestigious universities. I told them that where they went to college would determine the trajectory of their entire lives, that they needed to aim for the Ivy League or the top-tier schools. I took them on college tours starting when they were sophomores in high school. I helped them craft their applications, edit their essays, prepare for interviews. I treated getting into the right college like it was a military campaign that required total commitment. All 3 of them got into excellent schools. Andrew went to Princeton. Claire went to Yale. Michael went to Duke. I was so proud when those acceptance letters came. I felt like all the pushing, all the pressure, all the sacrifice had paid off. My children were going to have opportunities I never had. They were going to be positioned for success. But it didn't stop there. Once they were in college, I stayed involved. I called regularly to check on their grades, to make sure they were networking properly, to remind them that college wasn't just about learning, but about building connections that would serve them professionally. When Claire mentioned she was thinking about taking a semester to study art in Italy, I talked her out of it. That was a distraction. She needed to focus on internships and building her resume. After college, I pushed them toward the most prestigious career paths. When Andrew said he was interested in teaching, I discouraged it. Teachers didn't make enough money, didn't have enough status. I suggested he go into finance instead, where his analytical skills could be better compensated. When Michael said he was thinking about family medicine, I pushed him toward surgery. Surgeons were at the top of the medical hierarchy, had the most prestige, made the most money. And they listened to me. All three of them followed the paths I laid out, the paths I was convinced would lead to success and fulfillment. They worked incredibly hard, just like I'd taught them to. They climbed their respective ladders, accumulated their achievements, built impressive careers. From the outside, they looked like they had it all. But during that birthday weekend last month, I started to see the cracks. Andrew mentioned casually that he was on his third marriage. He said it like it was just a fact, like it didn't particularly bother him that he'd failed at marriage twice already. I asked him if he was happy with his current wife, and he looked at me like it was a strange question. He said, "I don't know, Dad. I'm barely home. I work 80 hours a week." Happy isn't really the point. Claire talked about her work with this tone of grim endurance. She's a partner at her firm, incredibly successful by any measure. But when she described her typical day, it sounded like a prison sentence. She wakes up at 5, works out, gets to the office by 7, works until 8 or 9 at night, comes home and answers emails until she falls asleep. She does this 6 days a week, sometimes 7. When I asked her what she did for fun, she looked genuinely confused, like she didn't understand the question. Michael's wife pulled me aside at one point during the weekend and told me she was worried about him. She said he'd been having panic attacks, that he was on medication for anxiety and depression, that he'd told her he felt trapped in a life he didn't choose, but didn't know how to escape. She said he'd been talking about quitting medicine entirely, maybe doing something completely different, but he was terrified of disappointing me and his mother. I sat with that information for days after they all left. I kept thinking about my 3 children, these incredibly accomplished people who seemed so fundamentally unhappy. And I started to wonder if maybe I'd gotten it all wrong. If maybe the thing I'd been most proud of, raising successful children, was actually the thing I should regret most. I thought about all the times I pushed them toward achievement and away from joy. All the times I told them that what they wanted to do wasn't practical, wasn't prestigious enough, wasn't ambitious enough. All the times I'd made them feel like their worth was conditional on their accomplishments, like love and approval had to be earned through success. I thought about Andrew's interest in teaching, how animated he'd been when he talked about it in college, how I'd crushed that enthusiasm because I thought finance was a better path. I thought about Claire's desire to study art in Italy, how she'd shown me pictures of the program with such excitement, how I'd dismissed it as a frivolous distraction. I thought about Michael's interest in family medicine, how he'd talked about wanting to build long-term relationships with patients, how I'd steered him toward surgery because it was more prestigious. I'd raised them to believe that achievement was everything, that success was measured in salary and status and credentials. I'd taught them to ignore their own desires, their own interests, their own sense of what would make them happy, in favor of pursuing the most impressive career paths. I'd created a framework where their value as people was tied to their professional accomplishments. where being excellent wasn't enough if someone else was more excellent. And they'd internalized all of it. They'd become exactly what I'd pushed them to become. High-achieving, competitive, driven, constantly measuring themselves against external standards of success. They'd mastered the art of delayed gratification, always working toward the next promotion, the next achievement, the next milestone that would finally make them feel like they'd arrived. But they'd never arrived, because the destination kept moving. There was always another level to reach, always someone doing better, always a reason why their current success wasn't quite enough. I'd taught them to run on a treadmill that had no end, and now in their 50s, they were exhausted and hollow and didn't know how to stop running. I called Andrew a few weeks after the birthday weekend. I told him I'd been thinking about our conversation, about him saying happy wasn't the point. I asked him if he remembered wanting to be a teacher when he was in college. There was a long silence on the phone. Then he said, "Dad, that was 35 years ago. I haven't thought about that in decades." I asked him if he ever thought about what his life might have been like if he'd pursued it. Another silence. Then he said, "I try not to think about that. It's too depressing." I talked to Claire a few days later. I asked her about the art program in Italy, if she remembered wanting to do that. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. She said, "Of course I remember. You told me it was a waste of time, that I needed to focus on my career. So I did. I've been focusing on my career for 30 years, and I'm miserable, but at least I'm successful, right?" The bitterness in her voice broke something in me. This was my daughter, someone I loved more than anything, and she was telling me that the path I'd pushed her onto had made her miserable. And she was saying it like it was just an accepted fact, like misery was the price you paid for success, like that was just how life worked. I haven't talked to Michael yet. His wife asked me to wait, said he was in a fragile state, and a conversation with me about his career choices might push him over an edge she's trying to help him back away from. So I'm waiting. But I think about him constantly, about this man who saves lives for a living, but can't figure out how to save his own sense of peace and purpose. I've been thinking a lot about my own father lately. He died when I was 40, which means he never lived to see what his grandson accomplished, never knew that his son's children would become an investment banker, a lawyer, a surgeon. I used to think that was sad, that he missed out on seeing how far we'd come from his factory worker life. But now I wonder if maybe he would have seen what I'm only seeing now, that my children aren't happy, that they've achieved everything I pushed them to achieve, and it hasn't brought them joy or fulfillment or peace, that I raised them to win a game that doesn't actually have a prize at the end. My father used to come home from the factory exhausted and frustrated, angry about his low pay and his lack of options. But I also remember him singing while he did dishes, laughing with my mother in the evenings, playing catch with me in the backyard, even when he was tired. I remember him as someone who struggled, but who also knew how to be present, how to find small moments of happiness, even in a difficult life. I don't see that in my children. They have everything my father didn't have, all the security and opportunity and material comfort he could never provide. But they don't have what he had. They don't know how to be present. They don't know how to find joy in ordinary moments. They don't know how to measure their lives by anything other than achievement and status. And that's my fault. I taught them that. I modeled it. I created an environment where accomplishment was everything and happiness was beside the point. I thought I was protecting them from the struggles I'd seen my father endure, but instead I condemned them to a different kind of struggle, one that's harder to name, but just as destructive. I don't know how to fix this. My children are in their 50s. Their patterns are set. Their lives are built around the framework I helped create. I can't go back and redo their childhoods. I can't give them back the opportunities they missed, the paths they didn't take, the versions of themselves they might have been if I'd encouraged them to follow their interests instead of my ambitions for them. But I can tell them the truth. I can tell them that I was wrong, That the parenting approach I was so proud of, the one that produced such impressive results, actually failed in the most fundamental way. That success without happiness isn't success at all. That I pushed them toward achievements that look good on paper, but feel empty in real life. I can tell them that I'm sorry, that if I could do it over, I'd care less about their grades and more about their interests. I'd let Andrew join that rock band. I'd encourage Claire to study art in Italy. I'd support Michael in becoming a family doctor, if that's what called to him. I'd teach them that their worth wasn't conditional on their accomplishments, that love wasn't something they had to earn through success. I can tell them that it's not too late to change course, that they don't have to keep running on the treadmill I set them on, that they can step off, figure out what actually brings them joy, build lives around that instead of around achievement and status, that they can disappoint me, disappoint everyone, if it means finding something real to live for. I don't know if they'll listen. They're so deep in the patterns I helped create, so invested in the lives they've built, so afraid of what it would mean to walk away from all those years of work and sacrifice. And maybe they won't change. Maybe the damage is done, and they'll just keep grinding away at careers that train them until they retire, and then wonder what it was all for. But I have to try, because I'm 84 years old, and I don't have many years left, and I can't die knowing that the thing I was most proud of as a father was actually the thing that hurt my children most. I can't die without at least trying to undo some of the harm I did by pushing them so hard toward a version of success that's left them empty. If you're a parent, especially if you're pushing your children toward achievement, I need you to stop and think about what you're actually teaching them. Are you teaching them that their worth is conditional? That love has to be earned through success? That happiness is less important than status? That they should ignore their own desires in favor of impressive credentials? Because if you are, I'm telling you from experience that it doesn't work. You might raise successful children. You might raise children who make a lot of money and have impressive titles and achieve things that look great on paper. But you also might raise children who don't know how to be happy, who don't know how to rest, who don't know how to measure their lives by anything other than achievement. And one day you'll be 84 years old, looking at your accomplished children, and you'll realize they're miserable. And you'll understand that you did that your pushing and your pressure and your focus on achievement created people who can succeed at anything except being content. Don't make my mistake. Love your children for who they are, not for what they achieve. Encourage their interests, even if they're not practical. Let them pursue joy, even if it doesn't lead to prestige. Teach them that happiness matters, that rest matters, that being a good person matters more than being an accomplished person. I raised 3 successful children who are deeply unhappy, and I'm spending whatever time I have left trying to help them understand that they can choose differently, that they can step off the treadmill, that they can build lives around something other than achievement. But I wish I'd taught them that from the beginning. I wish I'd valued their happiness as much as I valued their success. I wish I'd been a different kind of father. It's too late for me to change the past. But if you're still raising your children, it's not too late for you. Please learn from my mistake. Success means nothing if the successful people are miserable. Nothing.